All right, you ready? I dug up 4 of the unsettling Reddit confessions on the internet for you. You know what to do. Like, sub, and let's go. I, a 36-year-old woman, live alone in a rural cottage. My friends keep thanking me for showing up to events I never attended. Posted 3 days ago by Throwaway Jess Rural. I moved into this cottage 14 months ago. After a decade of London, the noise, the neighbors through every wall, the constant hum of someone else's life bleeding into mine, I wanted silence. Real silence. The kind where you can hear rain hit individual leaves. I work remotely as a web developer, so all I needed was decent broadband and a desk by the window. My best friend Claire lives in the village, about a 10-minute drive down the lane. My younger sister Sophie is 3 hours away in her flat in Bristol. My nearest neighbor is Ethan, a retired widower who lives just down the road and waves at me every morning from his garden. It was perfect. It was exactly the life I designed for myself. But over the past few weeks, small things have been wrong. I came home from a supply run and found my favorite mug on the wrong shelf. Second shelf instead of third, handle facing out instead of in. I told myself I must have moved it without thinking. Then, one evening, I sat down at my laptop after being out all afternoon, and the underside was warm. Not faintly warm, warm like it had been running for hours. I checked my browser, nothing unusual in the history. I convinced myself the charger was doing something odd. A week later, I came back from Claire's and found a damp towel draped over the bathroom rack. I had not showered that morning. I had not used that towel. But there it was, still wet. She kept finding reasons to explain it away, until she couldn't. Last weekend, I drove to Sophie's flat for a proper visit, left Friday evening, came back Sunday afternoon. When I walked into my bedroom, the duvet was pulled tight across the mattress with crisp hospital corners. I have never made a bed with hospital corners in my life. I stood there staring at it, and then I leaned down and pressed my face into the pillow. Perfume. Something floral and sharp. Nothing I own, nothing I have ever worn. My stomach dropped. I walked to the kitchen. In the bin, sitting right on top, was a used tea bag. Earl Grey. I drink builder's tea. I have never once bought Earl Grey. The tea bag was still damp. I am standing in my kitchen and my hands are shaking, and I know with absolute certainty that someone was in my cottage this weekend. Not passing through, not checking on anything. They slept in my bed. They showered. They made tea and sat somewhere in my home, comfortable, unhurried, like they belonged here. And then they tidied up after themselves and left before I got back. She tried to talk herself out of it for 2 days. I spent Monday and Tuesday telling myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe I made the bed half asleep before I left for Sophie's and just forgot. Maybe Ethan had popped in to check the pipes. He mentioned a leak in the lane last month and somehow left a tea bag behind. Earl Grey is an old man's tea, right? I was reaching, and I knew it, but the alternative was too much. Then on Wednesday evening, Claire sent me a text. Just a casual thing. She said it was lovely seeing me at the village fundraiser on Saturday, that she was glad I came out, and that the green jacket looked great on me. I read it 3 times. I was not at the fundraiser. I was at Sophie's flat in Bristol the entire day. I texted Claire back and said I think she had me confused with someone else. She replied almost immediately. No confusion. She had walked right up to me. We chatted for a few minutes about the raffle, and then I wandered off toward the car park. She said I seemed a bit quiet, but otherwise perfectly normal. I rang Sophie. She confirmed what I already knew. I arrived at her flat Friday evening. We spent all of Saturday together, shopping in the morning, cooking in the afternoon, a film that night. I never left. So whoever Claire spoke to at that fundraiser, wearing my green jacket, looking enough like me that my best friend did not notice a difference, that was not me. Someone was not just using her home. Someone was being her. After Claire's message, I started looking properly. I went through the cottage room by room. In the bathroom, a second towel, not the one from before, had been folded and placed neatly on the rack. The kitchen sponge was damp, even though I had not washed a single dish since getting back. There was a faint ring on the counter near the window, a mug stain in a spot where I never set anything down. Then I opened my laptop and checked the browsing history. Between Friday night and Sunday morning, the exact window I was at Sophie's, someone had visited a recipe site, the local parish news page, and a weather forecast for my village. 3 tabs, opened and closed like someone settling in for the evening. I sat at my desk and felt the walls of the cottage shrink around me. This was not a burglary. Nothing was missing. Nothing was damaged. Whoever this person was, they let themselves in, used my things, browsed my laptop, slept in my bed, and then went into the village and spoke to my friends as if they were me. I locked every window that night. On Thursday, I had a locksmith out to change the front door lock entirely. I have not told anyone what is happening. Not Claire, not Sophie, not Ethan. Because how do I say this out loud without sounding like I have completely lost my mind? The new locks changed nothing. I changed the lock on a Thursday. By Saturday, I had to drive out to a client meeting 2 hours away. Just a day trip, left at 8 in the morning, back by 6 in the evening. 10 hours. When I walked through the front door that evening, the desk chair was pulled out about 2 inches from where I always push it in. The fridge had been rearranged. Not ransacked, not messy, just reorganized. The milk moved to the left side. The butter dish shifted to a different shelf. Small things, the kind of changes you would only notice if you were looking for them. And I was looking now. I called Sophie that night and told her everything. The mug, the laptop, the towels, the hospital corners, the Earl Grey, Claire seeing me at the fundraiser when I was in Bristol. Sophie went quiet for a long time and then told me to call the police. So I did. An officer came out the next morning. He was polite. He looked at the lock, checked the windows, walked through every room. No forced entry, no damage, nothing stolen. He asked me if I had been under a lot of stress recently. He said working from home in an isolated area can play tricks on the mind. I wanted to scream. Instead, I thanked him and watched him drive away down the lane. After that, I started photographing everything, every single room, every surface, before I left the cottage for any reason. The angle of the blanket on the sofa, the position of the shampoo bottle in the tub, left side, label facing out, the exact arrangement of the dish rack. The photos did not lie. The next time I went out overnight, just one night at Sophie's, I compared the photos when I got back. The blanket had been refolded. The shampoo bottle had moved to the right side of the tub. The dish rack held 2 plates in a bowl, dried and stacked, when I had left it empty. Every difference was small. Every difference was deliberate. And every difference told me the same thing. Someone, a woman, based on the perfume still faintly clinging to my pillow, based on whoever Claire spoke to at that fundraiser, is entering my cottage every time I leave. She is not breaking in. There is no sign of force on the new lock. She is not stealing from me or vandalizing anything. She is using my shower, sleeping in my bed, cooking in my kitchen, and tidying up after herself before she goes. She is living here. She is living my life in the gaps when I step out of it. And I have no idea who she is. Nope, nope, nope. The hospital corners detail made my stomach drop. That is not someone rummaging through your stuff. That is someone settling in. Call the locksmith. Change your locks yesterday. Not tomorrow, not after the police visit. Right now. Tonight. And install a deadbolt that cannot be copied at a hardware store. Quiet little fox. Has anyone else noticed she only comes when Jessica is away overnight? She is tracking your schedule somehow. Do you share your calendar with anyone? Google Calendar, shared workspace, anything? I went through every app and account after reading this. My Google Calendar is not shared with anyone, but I checked my work Slack and my status automatically updates to away when I disconnect from my home Wi-Fi. Anyone in my workspace could see exactly when I leave and when I come back. Claire is the only person from the village in that workspace, and I trust her completely, but I do not know who else might have seen it. I feel sick. A few days later, she posted again. She's inside the cottage and I can hear her on the stairs. I bought a wildlife camera, the kind you strap to a tree to catch deer. motion activated, night vision, timestamps the footage automatically. I hid it on my bookshelf between two rows of paperbacks, angled toward the front door and the hallway. Then I told Sophie I was coming to stay for the weekend. I drove to Bristol on Friday afternoon, and I waited. When I got home Sunday evening, I pulled the memory card and plugged it into my laptop. At 11:40 on Friday night, roughly 6 hours after I left, a woman unlocked my front door and walked in. She had my build, my hair color. She was carrying a canvas bag of groceries. She set them on the kitchen counter, took off her jacket, and opened my laptop. She sat at my desk for 6 hours. 6 hours. She browsed, she typed, she got up once to make tea. Then she showered. She cooked dinner, pasta from what I could see. She ate at my table. She washed up. She went to bed. In my bed. In the morning, she made the bed with those same hospital corners, wiped down the kitchen, locked the front door behind her, and left. I scrubbed back through a week of older footage the camera had been silently recording. She came every single time I left overnight. Every trip to Sophie's. Every client meeting that ran late enough for me to get a hotel. Every single one for the past 3 months. Then yesterday, Ethan knocked on my door holding a Tupperware container. He said he was returning it. I had apparently brought him soup 2 weeks ago. I have never made soup for Ethan. I have never made soup in this cottage. She is not just living here when I am gone. She is talking to my neighbor. She is feeding him. She is being me. Old growth horror. The fact that Ethan genuinely could not tell it was not you is the part that wrecks me. How close does this person have to look to fool your actual neighbor? Redacted Melissa, please tell me you have sent that camera footage to the police already. That woman has a key, Jessica. She did not break in. She walked in like she belonged. Old growth horror. This. The key is the most important detail in the entire post. Either she copied one, or she had one from before Jessica moved in. Either way, the landlord needs to answer some very uncomfortable questions about who else has access to that cottage. I have been sitting in bed for the last hour, scrubbing through the camera footage frame by frame, trying to get a clear look at her face. Every single time she enters the cottage, her head is angled slightly away from the bookshelf. Every time. She never looks directly at the camera. I do not know if she knows it is there, or if it is just coincidence, but I cannot get a clean frame of her features. Just the shape of her, my shape, my hair, my build, moving through my home like she has lived here for years. It is 11:30 at night, and I am exhausted and my eyes are burning from staring at this screen. Then I hear the back door, the latch. That specific click it makes when someone lifts the handle and pushes inward. I am not supposed to be hearing this. She has never come when I am home. I have always been away. I am not away right now. I grab my phone and open the camera app, the live feed from the bookshelf. The hallway light turns on. I can see a figure step into frame. Same build, same hair. She is setting a bag down by the door. She is here. She is inside my cottage right now, and I am upstairs in my bedroom, and I do not know what to do. I lock the bedroom door. I am typing this from under the duvet like a child, and I know how that sounds, but I cannot think straight. I can hear her downstairs. Cupboards opening, the kettle clicking on. She is making tea. She is making tea in my kitchen at nearly midnight, and she does not know I am here. Or maybe she does. Oh God, maybe she does. I just heard a floorboard creak at the bottom of the stairs. She is not in the kitchen anymore. The footsteps are slow, measured, not rushed, not panicked. The footsteps of someone who knows exactly where every step creaks and where to place her weight. They are coming up the stairs. I do not know what to do. I do not know what happens if she reaches this door and finds it locked. I do not know what happens if she finds out I know. The footsteps are on the landing now. I can hear her breathing. Or maybe that is me. I cannot tell anymore. I am posting this. If I do not update again, sleepless in Devon. I had something vaguely similar. Things moved, food missing. turned out to be a former tenant who never returned a key. But they never impersonated me. This is a completely different level. The user Throwaway Jess Rural has not posted again since that night. On to the next one. I, 24 female, moved into a rural cottage and my camera keeps capturing handwriting on the walls that isn't there. Posted 3 days ago in r/nosleep. So I'm Brooke, I'm 24, and I shoot film. Mostly portraits, some landscape stuff when the light cooperates. My younger sister Megan and I had been crammed into a one-bedroom in the city for over a year, splitting rent that ate through everything I made. When I found this cottage listed online for almost nothing, rural, middle of nowhere, but gorgeous window light, I didn't even hesitate. We drove out, met the landlord Caleb, and he walked us through the place. Small, a little rough around the edges, but solid. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with this perfect south-facing window, and a back garden that had gone completely wild. Caleb was friendly, maybe mid-30s, told us the previous tenant left suddenly and never came back for her things. There were still boxes in the hallway closet. He said he could clear them out but hadn't gotten around to it. He also offered to repaint the back bedroom, said the walls were in rough shape, the plaster was uneven. We told him not to bother, we didn't mind character. Megan and I moved in that weekend. The first week was honestly perfect, quiet in a way the city never was. I could hear wind through the jedrow at night, nothing else. Megan started sleeping better almost immediately. I set up a little dark room in the bathroom and started shooting my first roll inside the cottage. Megan reading on the couch, the kitchen light pouring across the counter, the back bedroom with its peeling paint and bare bulb. The film came back wrong. I developed that roll 2 nights ago. The kitchen shots were fine. Megan's portraits were fine. But every single frame I took in the back bedroom had something on the walls. Writing. Scratched into the plaster beneath the paint, completely invisible to the naked eye, but the camera flash caught it perfectly. Shallow grooves that only showed up when hard light raked across them at the right angle. The same phrase, repeated on every wall, in desperate, uneven handwriting. He is lying about what happened to her, over and over. Behind the door, above the window frame, along the baseboard. Someone had carved those words into the plaster with something sharp, probably a nail, and then the walls were painted over. I held the negatives up to the light and counted. 9 frames in that room, 9 times the same sentence staring back at me. I sat on the bathroom floor with the negatives in my lap and felt the ground tilt sideways underneath me. Megan was asleep down the hall. Caleb had offered to repaint that room before we even moved in. Has anyone ever seen anything like this? I don't know what to do with what I found. Brooke went back into that bedroom. I couldn't leave it alone. The next morning, I grabbed my flashlight and went into the back bedroom before Megan woke up. I ran my fingers across every wall, every corner, along the baseboard. Nothing. The plaster felt smooth under the paint. Whatever was carved into those walls was so shallow that touch alone couldn't find it. So I loaded another roll and started shooting. Flash after flash after flash. When I developed that roll, the phrases had changed. Same handwriting, tight, slanted, desperate, but different words now. He told them I did it. That one was above the doorframe. She is still there. Along the far wall near the floor. Nobody looked. Scratch small behind the radiator pipe. I showed Megan. She went pale and told me we needed to leave. I get it. She is younger than me, and this place suddenly felt like something we should not have walked into. But the rent is almost nothing, and we burned through our savings on the move out here. We literally cannot afford to go anywhere else right now. So instead of packing, I started photographing every wall in the cottage, room by room. I shot 6 rolls over 2 days. The writing only appeared in certain places. The back bedroom, the hallway near the bathroom, and behind the kitchen door. Nowhere else. Someone chose those spots deliberately. Someone who knew exactly where to hide. I peeled back a small section of paint near the baseboard in the hallway with a razor blade. Underneath, faint scratches in the plaster. So shallow they were invisible unless light hit them at just the right angle. Whoever did this used something thin and sharp, like a nail, and carved carefully. Then the walls were painted over. I texted Caleb. Kept it casual, Asked if he knew anything about the previous tenant, what she was like, why she left. He responded fast, friendly as always. Said she was quiet, kept to herself, left one day without giving notice. Never came back for her boxes. Then he offered again to come repaint the back bedroom. Said he felt bad about the rough walls and could swing by that weekend. I told him no thanks, we were fine. I sat there staring at his messages for a long time after that. He wants to repaint the one room covered in hidden writing. The room where someone scratched a warning into the plaster before the walls were sealed shut. I started searching the cottage address online. Old listings, local news archives, anything. I haven't found much yet, but I'm not stopping. Someone lived here before us and carved a message into every wall she could reach. She said he is lying. She said nobody looked. I need to know who she was talking about. Brooke kept digging. I spent 2 days going through local news archives and public records online. I searched the cottage address, the road name, the nearest village, anything that might connect to whoever lived here before us. Eventually, I found it. A case from about 4 years ago. A woman in this area was accused by her husband, a man named Spencer, of murdering his sister. The sister had vanished without a trace. Spencer went public with the accusation, told the local press his wife was responsible. The wife denied everything. Then, before any charges were formally filed, the wife herself disappeared. Just gone. The case went cold. No body was ever found for the sister. No one ever located the wife. I sat at the kitchen table reading the same 3 articles over and over, matching dates. The timeline fit. The previous tenant, the woman Caleb said left without notice and never came back for her things, matched the wife's description almost exactly. I loaded another roll and went deeper into the hallway near the bathroom. The messages there were different, more frantic. The letters were jagged and uneven, like whoever carved them was running out of time. He buried her under the hawthorn tree. I read that line on my negatives and looked out the window. There is a massive old hawthorn tree in the back garden, the overgrown garden that Caleb specifically told us not to bother with when we moved in. He patched the walls on day 2. I keep thinking about something I barely noticed at the time. Our second day here, Caleb came by to fix a crack in the hallway wall. He brought spackle, smoothed it over, said old houses just shift and settle. I thanked him and went back to unpacking. That crack ran directly through one of the carved messages. I know that now because I photographed that exact section of wall 3 days later, and the message cuts off where the patch begins. He was not fixing a crack. He was covering a sentence. Megan barely sleeps anymore. She keeps the hallway light on all night and asked me twice this week when we can leave. I do not have an answer for her yet. I have not confronted Caleb. I have not told him what I found, but I need to know who actually owns this cottage. Because the more I look at this, the less I believe anything he has told us. I am posting this because I genuinely do not know what to do next. The woman who lived here before us carved a warning into every wall she could reach, and someone painted over all of it. I am sleeping 20 feet from a hawthorn tree that a dead woman's handwriting told me to look under. What am I supposed to do with that? Static line. The fact that only the camera picks it up is what gets me. Like the walls are trying to talk, but they can only do it through a lens. Sleep no more. X. The hawthorn tree is such a specific detail. That is not something you make up. She wanted someone to find it. Mild mayhem. I need you to take every single one of those photos to the police. Do not let anyone repaint those walls. I already scanned every negative and backed them up in 3 places. Caleb offered to repaint the back bedroom 2 days after we moved in, said the walls looked rough. I told him we liked it as is. I did not know why I felt so strongly about keeping those walls untouched. Now I do. Then, Brooke posted the update everyone was waiting for.
I know who our landlord really is now. I pulled the property records like you all told me to. The cottage is not owned by anyone named Caleb. It is registered to a man named Spencer. The same Spencer from the news articles, the husband who publicly accused his wife of murdering his sister 4 years ago. I cross-referenced everything. The timeline, the location, the description. Spencer is Caleb. He changed his name after his wife vanished and bought this cottage himself. He has been renting it out cheap to people like me and Megan, young, broke, unlikely to dig into the history of a place just because the price was right. Every single thing he did was calculated. Offering to repaint the back bedroom before we even unpacked. That was not kindness. That was him trying to cover the messages his wife scratched into the plaster. Telling us to leave the back garden alone because it was overgrown and full of nettles. That was him keeping us away from the hawthorn tree. Patching the hallway crack on our second day. That was him filling in a sentence she carved into the wall. His wife did not kill anyone. She found out what Spencer did to his own sister, and she tried to leave proof behind before she ran. He destroyed her reputation so that if anyone ever found the messages, they would assume a murderer wrote them, not a witness. There was one more message. Tonight I found it. There is a loose baseboard in the back bedroom, near the corner where the wall meets the floor. I only noticed it because Megan dropped a pen and it rolled underneath. When I pulled the board away, the plaster behind it was covered in writing, longer than anything else, steadier, like she had time in that one spot. He buried her under the hawthorn tree. If you find this, he already told everyone I did it. I ran because no one believed me. I held my phone light against the wall and read it 3 times. This woman lived where I sleep. She knew what was under the garden. She carved it into the bones of this house because no one would listen to her voice. And then she ran because staying meant being buried next to his sister. My hands have not stopped shaking. Megan is in the next room with her bag packed. We need to figure out our next move, and we need to do it before Caleb, Spencer, decides to come check on his property again.
Hello, it's Val. Please tell me you and your sister are not still living there. Please. Running on 3. The back bedroom detail is deeply unsettling. She chose that room because it was the farthest from the front door. She was writing where he was least likely to check. Drywall ghost. That tracks. When people hide things in walls, they always pick the room they feel safest in. Farthest from the entrance, smallest windows. It is a survival instinct even when you are just scratching words into plaster. Megan and I went out to the hawthorn tree at dawn. We brought a shovel from the garden shed and we did not tell anyone what we were doing. The ground beneath the tree was soft, looser than the packed earth everywhere else in that garden, like it had been turned over and settled back unevenly. We dug for maybe 20 minutes before the shovel hit something that was not soil or root. I will not describe what we found. I will say that it was enough. We stopped digging immediately. I called the police from the garden with dirt still on my hands. 2 officers arrived within the hour. When the detectives showed up, I handed over my phone with every photograph I had taken of the walls, the negatives, the scans, the messages scratched into the plaster. He studied them for a long time without speaking. Then I showed him a photo of Caleb. The detective looked at it and went very still. He asked me where I got this picture. I told him it was our landlord. He stepped away and made a phone call. They arrested Spencer that evening. The detective told us later that he had been a person of interest in his sister's disappearance years ago, but they could never build a case. His wife's carved messages were entered as evidence. Every single frame I had developed, every sentence she had hidden beneath the paint. Brooke and Megan left the cottage that same night. We packed what we could fit in the car and drove to a motel 40 minutes away. I sat on the edge of a bed that was not mine and thought about what it means to live inside someone's crime scene. Spencer put us there. He rented that cottage to us knowing what was under the garden, knowing what was carved into the walls, knowing that every coat of paint was just another layer of silence over a woman who tried to scream the only way she had left. She could not speak because no one would believe her. So she wrote it into the house itself, one careful scratch at a time, and then she ran. I think about her hands. I think about how long it must have taken, working at night with a nail or a pin, carving letter after letter into plaster that would be painted over by the man who made her disappear from her own life. She left her voice in those walls for someone to find. It took a camera and a roll of film and a stubborn 24-year-old who could not afford to move to finally hear her. The walls said what no one let that woman say out loud. I hope wherever she is, she knows someone finally listened. Drywall ghost. I used to restore old houses for a living. You would be horrified at what people hide inside walls. Letters, money, things I will not describe here. On to the next one. I, 33 female, found a birth certificate in my mother's safe with a different name scratched off mine, and the city of birth is somewhere I have never heard of. Posted to r/off my chest by Nurse Gracie Throw 6 days ago. The safe was only supposed to hold insurance papers. I do not even know where to start. I am a 33-year-old woman, night shift nurse, and I live alone in my apartment. That last detail matters because there is nobody here to tell me whether I am losing my mind or not. My mother, Laura, had a massive stroke 11 days ago. I had just finished a 12-hour shift when the call came in. I drove to the hospital still in scrubs. She was already intubated by the time I got there. Eyes closed, machines breathing for her, wires everywhere. I stood next to her bed and held her hand and told her I was going to take care of everything. She could not answer. She still cannot. The next morning, I drove to her house to find the insurance documents. She gave me the safe combination years ago, told me it was just in case something ever happened to her. 4 numbers. I punched them in and the lock clicked open. The insurance folder was right on top, but underneath it there was a manila envelope I had never seen before. I should have just grabbed the folder and left. I wish I had. She opened it anyway. Inside was a birth certificate, my photo, my date of birth. But the first name had been physically scratched off the paper, scraped away with something sharp, a blade or a pin, and Grace was written over it in different ink. The city of birth was a small town I have never visited, never driven through, never even heard of. I held it under the kitchen light and tilted it back and forth, and beneath the scratch marks, the original name was still faintly legible, Margaret Ann. There was a second envelope underneath. Inside, it was a missing child flyer, old enough that the paper had gone soft and yellow. It was from the same city. The infant in the photo shared my exact date of birth. I sat on my mother's kitchen floor for I do not know how long. Then I opened my laptop. I searched Margaret Ann and the name of that town. The first result was a cold case missing persons page. It has been actively maintained for 33 years by a couple who call Margaret their stolen daughter. They post every year on her birthday. My birthday. The page had a photo of them holding a baby, 2 strangers holding an infant that might be me. I am sitting on this floor right now. The laptop screen is still glowing. I do not know who I am. For 2 days, Grace did not leave her apartment. I drove home from Laura's house that night and I do not remember the drive. I know I made it because I woke up on my couch the next morning, still in the clothes I had been wearing, shoes still on, laptop bag on the floor next to me. I called the hospital and told them I was sick. First time in 6 years I have called in. Then I sat in the dark and I went through every single memory I have of my childhood, one by one, like I was reviewing patient charts, looking for what I missed. And it was all there. Laura never had photo albums from before I was about 4. I asked about it once when I was maybe 12, and she said there had been a water leak in storage and everything was ruined. We moved twice before I started kindergarten. She told me it was for work. She had no siblings, no parents she kept in touch with, no cousins at holidays. When I asked about my father, she would get this look. Not sad, not angry, just closed. And say he was not a good man and that was all I needed to know. I stopped asking. I called Paige that second night. She is my coworker, my closest friend. The only person I trusted enough to say this out loud to. I told her everything. The safe, the certificate, the scratched off name, the flyer, the missing persons page. There was silence on the line for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "Oh my God, Grace." Then she said, "Do not contact anyone. Do not post anything. Talk to a lawyer first." She went to see Laura instead. I went back to the hospital the next afternoon. Laura was off the ventilator by then, but barely verbal. The right side of her face droops. Her right hand does not move. Her eyes, though, her eyes work fine. She watched me walk in, and I saw something in her expression that I had never noticed before. Or maybe I had noticed it my whole life and just never had the right word for it. It looked like fear. I sat in the chair next to her bed and I held up my phone with a photo of the birth certificate on the screen. I said, "Mom, what is this?" Her monitors started climbing. Her left hand grabbed at the bed rail. She made a sound that was not a word. The nurse on duty, someone I know, someone I have worked alongside, came in and told me gently that I was upsetting her and maybe I should step out. So I stepped out. I stood in the hallway of the ICU where I have worked hundreds of shifts, and I felt like I was grieving a person who was still breathing 20 feet away from me. I have not contacted the couple from the missing persons page. I am terrified that if I confirm what I already know, then everything, my name, my childhood, every birthday candle, every time she told me she loved me, all of it was built on top of something unforgivable. And the worst part, the part I cannot say out loud to anyone except strangers on the internet, is that I still love her. I love the woman who may have stolen me.
Grace kept digging. I found the article 3 nights later. I had been searching the local newspaper archives from that town, the one listed on the birth certificate, and there it was. A 26-year-old piece about an infant abducted from a stroller outside a laundromat. The parents were inside. The mother stepped out and the stroller was gone. The baby's name was Margaret Ann. I read it sitting cross-legged on my bed at 2 in the morning, and my hands were shaking so badly I had to set the laptop down on the mattress. The nurse in me started cataloging my own vitals like a reflex. Elevated heart rate, nausea, tunnel vision, shallow breathing. Classic acute stress response. Textbook. Knowing the clinical term did not help at all. The police investigated for years. The case went cold. But the family never stopped. I went back to the missing persons page and I read every single post those parents have written. Every year on her birthday. My birthday. 33 posts. The early ones are desperate and raw. The later ones are quieter, but no less gutted. The most recent one, from this past year, just said, "We are still here, Margaret. We are still looking. We will never stop." I met Paige at a diner after my next shift. She sat across from me and watched my face and said, "You look like you have not slept in a week." I told her about the article. She pushed a napkin across the table and wrote the name of a lawyer on it. Someone who handles cases like this. She said, "Grace, you need professional help with this, not just me." Grace already knew. She was not ready to act on it. I have thought about DNA testing. I have not done it. Because right now, there is still a version of reality where this is some horrible coincidence, where the certificate is a clerical error, where Laura had a reason that is not the worst reason. The second I send that test in, that version dies. And if the results come back the way I think they will, then my mother, the woman recovering from a stroke in a hospital bed, the woman who taught me to read and braided my hair and drove me to nursing school orientation, that woman committed a crime that destroyed another family for over 3 decades. If I report it, she faces kidnapping charges while she is lying there half paralyzed and unable to speak in her own defense. If I do not report it, there are 2 people in a small town I have never been to who have spent 33 years wondering if their daughter is alive. I lie in my apartment at night and I scroll through their posts and I feel like I am reading letters addressed to me that were lost in the mail for my entire life. I do not know what to do. I feel like I am standing in the rubble of someone else's life and I just found out it was supposed to be mine. Cold Case Rabbit. The fact that the missing persons page has been maintained for 33 years means those parents never gave up. That detail alone is devastating. Quiet reader. The part that unsettles me most is that Laura relocated 3 times in 2 years. That is not impulsive. That is someone who planned and adjusted and kept planning. That level of sustained deception from a parent is hard to process. Deleted by choice. I work in records, and I have seen amended birth certificates before, but a scratched-off first name is not how any legal amendment works. Someone physically altered that document by hand, which means it was never processed through a court. You are right. And that is what made my hands shake when I held it. The scratch marks were done with something sharp, maybe a razor blade, and then someone wrote Grace over the indentation in slightly different ink. I grew up believing this was a normal document. I used a copy of it to get my first driver's license. I have no idea how it passed. A few days later, Grace came back with an update. I finally spoke to the couple from the missing child page. Before I could act on any of the advice in the comments, something happened. A man named Derek contacted me, Laura's ex-partner. I barely remember him, a tall figure in the doorway of our second apartment, maybe our third, when I was very small. He heard about Laura's stroke through someone they both used to know, and he tracked down my number. He said he needed to talk to me and that it was urgent. Paige told me not to go alone, so she came with me. We met him at a coffee shop near the hospital. He looked like he had not slept in days. His hands were shaking around his cup. And then he told me everything. He said he was driving the car the night Laura took me. They were passing through that small town. Laura saw a stroller outside a laundromat, unattended for just a moment. She got out. She picked up the baby. She got back in the car and told him to drive. He said he panicked and he drove. He said Laura changed her appearance, cut her hair, moved them 3 times in 2 years. When he finally told her he wanted to go to the police, she cut him out completely. He has not spoken to her in almost 30 years. He sat across from me and said that guilt has eaten him alive for 3 decades and that he is sorry. I felt nothing. I sat there looking at a man who was functionally an accomplice to my own kidnapping, and I could not access a single emotion. I told him I needed time. He said he would go to the police himself if I wanted him to. I said not yet. She hired the lawyer that same week. Paige had been carrying that napkin with the lawyer's name in her wallet since the diner. She handed it to me in the parking lot after we left Derek sitting in that coffee shop. I called the next morning. The lawyer specializes in exactly this kind of case, which I did not even know was a category of law until a few weeks ago. She was calm and direct and did not seem shocked by anything I told her, which somehow made it feel more real than anything else had. She said the first step was to facilitate contact with the biological parents through her office, not through me directly, so that there would be a legal framework around whatever came next. I agreed. I gave her everything: the birth certificate, the flyer, the name of the town, the missing persons page. She said she would reach out to them on my behalf. I am sitting in my apartment right now waiting for a phone call that might confirm that my entire life has been a lie, or might somehow explain it away, even though I know deep down there is no explanation that makes this okay. The lawyer told me to be ready for this to move quickly once the other family gets involved. I do not feel ready. I do not think I ever will be. Scrubs and coffee. As a fellow nurse, I cannot imagine going into a shift after finding something like this. Your entire sense of who you are just got ripped out from under you. Tired mom of, I am so sorry. I keep thinking about those parents maintaining that page for over 3 decades. They set it up when the internet was barely a thing and just kept it going year after year. Cold case rabbit. I checked and the page still has a counter showing the last update was 11 days ago. They refreshed it less than 2 weeks before this post went up. 33 years and they are still actively updating. I do not have words. The DNA results came back. The lawyer called on a Tuesday morning. The test confirmed what I already knew. I am Margaret Ann. I sat on the edge of my bed holding the phone, and I did not cry. I just looked at the wall and thought, okay, so that is real now. The lawyer arranged the call with my biological parents for the following Saturday. They are in their early 60s. They have lived in the same house the entire time. When the call connected, I could hear breathing for a few seconds before anyone spoke. Then the woman said, "Hello, Margaret," and caught herself and said, "I'm sorry. Hello, Grace." And she started to cry. The man was quieter. He said, "We never stopped looking for you. We never moved. We kept your room the way it was for 12 years before we finally let it go." I cried too, but it felt like I was crying for someone else. Their loss is so enormous and so specific, and I cannot feel it as mine yet, even though it is. I am the empty space they have been circling for 33 years, but I grew up whole. I grew up loved, or what I believed was love. I am not pressing charges against Laura. She is in a long-term care facility now, partially paralyzed, barely able to form sentences. This is not forgiveness. I want to be clear about that. It is just exhaustion, and the understanding that putting a half-paralyzed woman through the legal system will not give those two people back the 33 years they lost. I am keeping the name Grace. Legally, on paper, that is who I am. But Margaret lives inside me now, like a phantom limb, a name that belongs to me that I cannot feel. I put in for a transfer to a hospital in a different city. It went through last week. I changed my phone number. I told Paige I needed distance from everything connected to the life Laura built for me. The apartment, the hospital, the streets I drive on, all of it. Paige cried. She said she understood. She let me go, which is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me, and also the hardest thing I have ever asked for. I am writing this from a new apartment in a city where nobody knows my name or my story. I am free, technically. But I feel like someone who walked out of a house fire only to realize the house was never hers to begin with. Everything I thought I knew about myself, where I was born, what my name was, why my mother had no family, why we moved so much, all of it was scaffolding built around a crime. I do not know who I am without the lie yet, but I am figuring it out, one shift at a time, one morning at a time. Not a lawyer, but please talk to an attorney before you contact anyone from that missing child page. You could inadvertently implicate yourself or compromise a cold case that is technically still open. Let us move on to the next one. I, 27, female, have been getting a call every Thursday at 3:14 in the afternoon for 2 years. I finally picked up, and it was my own voice describing my living room in real time. Some things start so quietly, you forget to be afraid. My name is Amber. I am 27, a speech therapist at a small clinic in a town most people drive through without stopping. I live with my partner Nolan in a house off the main road, close enough to hear trucks pass at night. 2 years ago, I was driving home alone after a late session at the clinic. It was dark, maybe 9:30, and the back road I take cuts through farmland with no streetlights. I came around a bend, and my headlights caught something in the oncoming lane. A figure, standing perfectly still, facing my direction. Not on the shoulder, in the lane. I swerved hard to the right, clipped gravel, corrected, and kept driving. I did not slow down. I did not look in my rearview mirror. I told myself it was a deer, a post, a shadow. I told Nolan I had an uneventful drive home. I buried it so completely, I almost convinced myself it never happened. The first call came exactly 1 week later. Thursday, 3:14 in the afternoon, unknown number. I let it ring out. No voicemail. The next Thursday, same time, same thing. And the next. Every single Thursday for 2 years. 104 calls. I tried calling back. Dead line. Nothing on the other end. I blocked the number, and it came from a different one the following week. I had Nolan answer once, and it disconnected the instant he spoke. It only wanted me. Last Thursday, I finally picked up. I pressed the phone to my ear and heard my own voice. Not a recording of anything I have ever said. It was narrating my living room in real time. The blue mug on the coffee table. Nolan's hoodie draped over the arm of the couch. The window cracked half open. I moved the mug to the kitchen counter without saying a word. The voice said, "The mug is now on the counter beside the sink." My voice. My exact cadence. My exact pitch. Describing what I was doing the moment I did it. And my mouth was closed the entire time. She knew her own voice the way a surgeon knows their hands. I need to explain something about what I do for a living, because it matters. I am a speech therapist. I spend my days analyzing how people produce sound, placement of the tongue, airflow, resonance, the tiny muscular habits that make one person's voice distinct from every other voice on the planet. I know my own voice clinically. I know I have a slight nasality that sits around 400 hertz. I know I drop volume at the tail end of descriptive sentences. I know I micro-hesitate before proper nouns, a pattern so subtle most people would never catch it. The voice on that phone had all of it, every single marker. This was not a deep fake. I have listened to synthetic voice samples in continuing education courses, and they always miss something. The breath placement is wrong, or the formant transitions are too smooth. This voice had my imperfections in the right places. It was me. I told Nolan that night. He sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the whole thing, and he was scared, I could see it, but he went straight to practical. Record the next call. Try tracing the number through the carrier. File a police report. I love him for that. I needed someone to hand me a list of actions because I was not capable of building one myself. Hannah asked the question Amber had been avoiding for 2 years. I met my best friend Hannah for coffee that Saturday and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which is unusual for her, and when I finished, she asked me one question. Do you remember anything else about the figure on the road? I opened my mouth to say no, and then just sat there. I realized I had never actually tried to remember. I swerved and I buried it, and I never once sat with the image and asked myself what I actually saw. I still could not. The next Thursday I was ready. Phone on speaker, voice memo recording, Nolan beside me on the couch. 3:14. I picked up. The voice started again. The living room, the objects, all accurate in real time. Then it shifted. She is wearing a gray shirt with a coffee stain near the collar. She is sitting with her left foot tucked under her right thigh. Her jaw is tight. I looked down. Gray shirt. Coffee stain I had not noticed. Left foot exactly where it said. The voice was describing me as if it were watching from somewhere inside the room. Nolan heard every word. He went pale and did not speak for a long time after the call ended. The thing that sits with me most is not that the voice knew what I looked like in that moment. It is the tone. There was no malice in it, no urgency. It sounded like someone documenting observations during a session, calm, detached, professional. It sounded exactly the way I sound when I am recording clinical notes about a patient. The waveforms did not lie. I brought the recordings to my coworker Logan the next day. Logan does audio editing on the side and has software I do not have access to at home. I asked him to compare the call recording against a clip of my voice from a clinic session, one where I was narrating observations about a patient's articulation patterns. He loaded both files and ran a waveform comparison. Same fundamental frequency, same formant structure, same harmonic spacing. He zoomed in on a section where the voice on the call said the word table and laid it over a clip of me saying stable from the session recording. The spectrograms were nearly identical. Logan pulled off his headphones and just looked at me. He asked if I was messing with him. I told him I was not. He did not ask any more questions. The following Thursday, I decided not to answer. I wanted to know what would happen if I just let it ring. 3:14 came and went. The phone buzzed on the kitchen counter and I watched it until the screen went dark. Nothing happened. No voicemail, no follow-up. But that evening, Nolan told me something that made the floor tilt under me. He said that right around 3:14, while we were talking in the living room, I stopped mid-sentence and went completely still. Eyes open, mouth slightly parted, staring at a fixed point on the wall. 11 seconds. Then I finished my sentence as though nothing had happened. I have no memory of pausing. None. She went looking for answers on that stretch of road. She found nothing. I spent the next week searching for anything connected to that back road. Accident reports, missing persons cases, local news archives, even old forum posts about strange sightings in the area. There was nothing. No history, no legends, no other witnesses. Whatever I saw standing in that lane 2 years ago left no trace for anyone but me. I called Hannah and told her about the 11-second gap. She was quiet for a while, then she asked something I had not considered. She asked whether my dashcam had been running that night. I had completely forgotten I even had a dashcam back then. It was a cheap one Nolan installed when I started driving the back road for late sessions. I sold that car 8 months ago, but I might still have the memory card somewhere in the closet, in a box of old car things I never unpacked. I have not looked yet. Part of me does not want to know what it recorded. Part of me already knows I am going to look. Signal loss. The fact that you are a speech therapist and it is your voice being used feels way too targeted. Whatever this is, it chose you specifically because of your relationship with language and sound. Throwaway sleep.
2 years of calls and you only now answered. I respect the restraint, honestly, but I wonder what would have happened if you had picked up on week 1. Quiet kitchen lurk. Has Nolan ever tried talking to you during those 11 seconds? Like directly asking you a question while you were in that state? I want to know if you respond. He tried twice. The first time he said my name and I did not react at all, like he was not in the room. The second time he touched my arm and I flinched so hard I knocked my water off the table. But when I came back, I had no memory of flinching or of him speaking to me. He said my eyes were open the entire time. That is what made him stop trying. 2 days later, Amber found the memory card. I found the dashcam footage from that night. I tore the closet apart Saturday morning. The box was behind a suitcase we never use, stuffed with charging cables and an old phone mount, and the dashcam itself, still attached to its suction cup. The memory card was inside. I put it in my laptop, and there it was. A file stamped with the date from 2 years ago, 9:27 in the evening. I expected to see what I remember. Headlights on dark pavement, the figure appearing in the lane, me swerving past it and driving on. That is not what the footage shows. The footage shows me slowing down, pulling onto the shoulder. The engine cuts. For a few seconds, nothing moves. Then my door opens. I watch myself step out of the car and walk. Not run, not stumble. Walk toward the figure standing in the road. Steady, deliberate steps, like I knew exactly where I was going. 4 minutes of footage. 4 minutes I have absolutely no memory of. I am walking toward that thing with the posture of someone keeping an appointment. The clip cuts to black 3/4 of the way there. Not a fade, not a glitch, just black, mid-stride. That dashcam had no auto shutoff. Something stopped it. I sat at my desk for a long time after watching. The thing I cannot get past is not that I lost time or that something happened to me on that road. It is that I walked toward it. My legs carried me there, and my hands opened the door, and I went willingly, and I do not remember choosing any of it. My voice speaks without me on Thursdays. My body walked without me that night. I am a speech therapist. My voice and my body are the instruments I use to do my job, and neither one is fully mine anymore. Nope rope daily. Please do not amplify that whisper. I am dead serious. Some things are quiet for a reason. Drive fast, no glance. I had something similar on a stretch of road in Central Oregon. Figure in the road, middle of the night. I did not stop. Nothing followed me home, but I think about it constantly. You stopped, Amber. That is the difference. Signal loss. This is exactly what I keep coming back to. The dash cam shows her getting out and walking toward it. She did not just stop, she went to it. And whatever exchange happened in those 4 minutes before the camera cut, she brought it home inside her. The calls stopped. That should have been the end. The Thursday after I watched the dashcam footage, 3:14 came and went and my phone stayed silent. No unknown number, no buzzing on the counter. I sat there staring at it for 20 minutes waiting and nothing happened. The next Thursday, same thing, nothing. I told Nolan it was over. I called Hannah and said whatever it was, it had run its course. I wanted so badly to believe that. Then Nolan sat me down on a Sunday evening and told me something he had been holding back for weeks. He said that every Thursday at 3:14, I still go silent. Mid-sentence, mid-thought, I just stop. Mouth slightly open, eyes locked on a fixed point, completely unreachable. 11 seconds. Then I pick up exactly where I left off as though nothing happened. He had been counting. He said he stopped trying to snap me out of it after the last time, when I flinched so violently I scared us both but had no memory of it afterward. The calls did not stop. They just moved inside me. I set up a voice memo app on my phone to auto-record every Thursday starting at 3:13. The next week I caught it. 10 seconds of dead air. Then 1 second, one single second of my own voice whispering something. I have played that recording back more times than I can count. I can hear that it is words. I can hear that it is my voice. I can hear that the sentence has structure, a beginning and an end, but I cannot make out what it says. It sits right below the threshold of clarity, like someone speaking through a closed door. I have the tools to amplify it. I know exactly how. Spectrogram isolation, noise gating, formant enhancement. I use these techniques in my clinical work when analyzing disordered speech patterns. I could pull that whisper into the open in under an hour. I have not done it. I am not going to pretend this is about technical difficulty or not having the right software. I am afraid. I am afraid because of the dashcam footage. I am afraid because that footage showed me walking towards something willingly, with purpose, like a person honoring a commitment. And I think the whisper is the commitment. I think it is the thing I agreed to on that road 2 years ago when my body walked toward a figure in the dark and my mind was not invited. I have not amplified the recording. Every Thursday at 3:14, I hold my breath and sit very still and hope that this is the week it finally stops. Nolan watches me from across the room and counts to 11. He has not told me what my face looks like during those seconds, and I have not asked. 11 seconds of silence every week and you do not notice it happening. That is the part that genuinely disturbs me more than the calls. Your body is keeping an appointment you never made. And that is the last story for today. Thanks for listening, and if you want more, you know where to find us.